everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to create my Halloween spider jars. And this is what I've been looking forward to. So my spiders that I had created last time, we need a home for them. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm bringing in a Vlasic jar and a Smucker's preserves jar, and it's Smucker's jam jar, whichever. Anyway, I'm taking off the lids here, and then I'm going to take those jars and I'm going to soak those in water and scrub off all the paper on them. I'm also bringing in my hammer here along with my needle tool and also a nail. And we need to make a couple of holes in each of these jar lids, but we're going to start with the Vlasic one first. Now I need you guys to know here that I'm using my little needle tool here. Originally this is a metal punch tool and the needle is very strong, so I can actually punch a hole into this lid with that needle. So if you have a really strong needle tool from maybe metal punching or whatever, use that. It works great. If not, go ahead and use a nail like I'm doing right here. Now another thing is that I have a piece of wood here. This is just a scrap piece of wood. And if you're worried about damaging the surface of your tile or anything that you're working on, get a scrap piece of wood and use either your needle tool like I showed or this nail to go ahead and punch through with the wood underneath it. Okay, now that I've got that punched through on my holes, I'm taking some pink clay, and this was rolled out on my Atlas pasta machine on a number 4 setting, and I'm just going to cover that lid with this pink clay. Now you don't have to use pink, you can use whatever color you want. This is just one I decided, I'm just make the lid pink, what the heck. So, and I'm just kind of trying to push out any air pockets in there. So if you have to lift up your clay to make sure you get all the air pockets out of that, go ahead and do so. And then once you have the pink clay laid down the way you like it, take your nice blade here, your tissue blade, and go ahead and cut around the bottom. If you can't get it all really cleanly, use the small scissors, that helps too. But try to make sure that that clay is flush around the bottom rim of that lid. Once you have that done, you're going to go ahead and take your needle tool yet again, and on the underside of the lid, you're going to find where the holes were punched through. Reform your holes through the clay on the other side. So I'll bring in my needle tool, I'll do that, and then I'll go on the other side where the clay is right on top of the lid, and I'll make sure that I have a nice formed hole where I had originally punched through. Okay, here I'm bringing in a blue and white stack, and that stack was done on a number 1 setting on both the blue and the white. And you're just gonna, it's like 8 rows. If you need to, go and refer back to my black and white stack video. Otherwise, just place just a slice of this. I ran this through my pasta machine on, again, a number 4 setting, and I'm just gonna go ahead and put a slice next to each one, so it's going to be blue white all the way around this rim. This just adds in a nice little extra detail to this particular lid. Once you have that blue and white stripe all the way around your lid, I noticed in particular with this Vlasic jar lid, there were little indents all the way around the side, and each jar is different. I mean, I'm using a Vlasic here and I'm using a Smucker's jar. You could use all sorts of different jars, whatever you have. But some of them, like this one, has this natural indent. So I'm going to take my knitting needle here and I'm just going to rock it right over the indented areas. making a nice little three-dimensional feature on that lid. Once I have that done, then I decide to take my tissue blade and just cut it flush right on the bottom part, making it look nice and neat. All right, so now we're going to start working on our Vlasic jar, and I've got some pink clay here that I rolled out on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. I'm taking my tissue blade and I'm just cutting a nice straight line on this thing. Once I have that done, I look for, and this is, you're going to find this on these jars, there's like this ridge where the glass has come together, and it's going to be on 2 sides. And I'm using the, you might say, the little bubble formation on the bottom side of that jar. I'm just going to cover right over where that little bubble formation kind of ends and where it just goes straight again. It's kind of a nice way to judge whether or not you're straight. You don't have to use a ruler or anything. It's just like, yay! And then I'm going to join it up on the other side, and then I use my burnisher tool or your knitting needle to go ahead and make sure that that comes together. I'm also using my tissue blade here to make sure that the bottom edge here, I'm just cutting off all the extra clay and making it look nice and flush. I'm now going to bring in my orange clay, and we're going to go ahead and put that through the pasta machine on a number 4 setting. And then I'm just going to take this particular clay and I'm just going to cut a nice strip from it. So on one side, just kind of cut it where it's got a nice straight line, and then just kind of guesswork. You know, if you need to have some kind of paper guide, go ahead and do so. But, you know, my lines are not completely straight. I like to just like see what happens with it. And I'm cutting that flush on the one end. I'm going to find that joined area on my pink, and I'm just going to run this as a nice little stripe all the way around it. Now you can go ahead and make it curvy, wavy, whatever you wish, but I wanted to go ahead and make it nice and straight. All right, so now that I have my orange all the way around, I'm using my X-Acto knife to cut off any excess. And, you know, I place these join marks really right where one of those, you know, where the glass has got that ridge. Because there's 2 ridges, like I said, on 2 sides. And so at those particular areas, I kind of add extra little details. So this way then, when you go to put your spiders in the jar, you want to put it in the area where there's the nice viewing space and not where you have that glass join mark. So that's why I do this here. So again, I'm bringing in my black clay, again, done on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, creating a nice little line, and I'm going to put this on both sides of that orange stripe that I had just laid down. Here I'm going to go ahead and bring in some more of my orange clay, and I'm going to flatten this out again on a number 4 setting, and this is going to be a really nice long piece, and we're going to put this on the top part of the jar. So right where, I like to use the ridges and bumps of my jars. Right here, there's a little bit of that bubble thing like I had on the bottom, except it's right around the top area. So I'm going to use some orange clay and just kind of cover that up. And right where that join mark of the glass is, I'll cut that flush right in that area. Once I have that in, I use my tissue blade a little bit to just kind of make sure it's nice and neat on that edge where I've cut it. And once I have that, then we're going to go ahead and bring in some of the really fun decorating. And I'm going to bring in like my bullseye cane, which is a blue and white checkered bullseye cane with the nice, I want to say a nice purple in the middle, and it's got a little bit of a white ring. And once I have that cane created, I'm going to go ahead and reduce it down so I have different sizes of that bullseye cane. This way then it gives it a little bit of variation. Okay, so another little feature that I wanted to add in is I have some scrap clay here. Remember I took off some of that excess from the bottom of the lid on the Vlasic Jar Lid? So we're going to take that, and with a little bit of orange, and I think, yeah, I got some pink, whatever I have around, I'm going to go ahead and just take that scrap blue and white, take some purple, or pink here, sorry, some pink, looks like a little bit of black, whatever I've got. We're going to put logs of this together, and we're going to just twist it all up together, and it's going to be a nice, I want to say fairly large log, and you're just going to make sure that that kind of gets, spread out the more you do it or the more you roll it out. You're going to twist these all together, and then we're going to form this right around the edge on the upper part of our jar. Now, as you can tell here, I did not cut off this little snake so it was flush. Instead, I tapered off the ends, and then I just curled it around on the one side of the clay. And I did it right at where the glass, the juncture, that line kind of forms. I did it right at that juncture, and then I'm bringing in a couple of black balls, and I'm just going to use my knitting needle, make the indent, and just use this as a fun little feature into this jar. I do this right at the junctures, and see where I've got that other juncture. I'll probably take my, my bullseye cane right here. I'll place that right over that cut line. I'll also place it right at the bottom here. Just a nice little way to kind of cover up any kind of cuts that I have in my clay. And then from there, I just go around, and I'm just going to start decorating all the way around with my bullseye cane, with any kind of my blue and white stack. I'll cut slices from it and just decorate up this particular little jar. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up decorating the main body of this Vlasic jar. And I'll be using my blue and white stack, my bullseye cane, my small little balls that I like to form and indent and dot using my knitting needle tools. Okay, so just like the jar that we did with the Vlasic jar, right? We're going to take its lid now and we're going to add in some of the same similar details on the lid. And even if it covers over the holes that you had already formed, that's okay. Because what we're going to do is, and see, I have a slice there that, okay, didn't cut really great. That's all right. These are nice little areas where I like to overlap other little pieces over the top of it, whether it's a piece of the blue and white stack or even maybe another smaller piece of that same bullseye cane. And notice here I'm just spreading it out all over the top of this lid. So enjoy decorating this up and enjoy watching my hands talk as I also finish up our little Vlasic lid. Now we're moving on to our Smucker's spider jar, and I'm gonna do this particular jar just a little bit different. I rolled out that black clay. Again, I'm gonna find that juncture point on the jar, but I rolled out the black clay on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and notice how rough the edge is. That is done intentionally. The nice thing is that this clay is not completely, what do you call it? It's conditioned, but I always get a rigid edge. And I think many of you do when you run polymer clay through, you always kind of get a rigid or wackadoo edge. I'm going to use that to my advantage here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut flush right around where the jar lid meets, where it screws down. I'm going to cut that area flush so it's nice and neat, but I'm going to make sure that that rigid or that scrappy looking, frayed edge stays around where that little bubble part is on the Smucker jar. This is why I went ahead and I had to move up my clay a little bit because it was too far down on the jar anyway. You want to see that spider when he comes down in this jar. So to do that, I had to move it up. Also, when I did that, I'm going to have to cut, of course, the excess where that little join mark is with the glass. I'll cut that with my scissors. I'll use the tissue blade to finish up where I can get it nice and flush, where that join mark is. And then once I have that, and since I've formed it around the jar, we'll go ahead and cut that edge where the screw part is, cut off the excess black there. This way then your jar lid will be able to come down, no problem. Now, as you can tell, I'm bringing in my burnisher and I'm just kind of scoring it right along there, and I'm going at opposite directions. And I thought, let's take that scoring all the way around on this black. It's a nice little fun added feature to this jar, and it kind of matches up with that raggedy edge on the bottom of it. So once I did that, and I indent pretty heavily here on this thing. Once I have that done, we're going to go ahead and bring in our kaleidoscope cane, and we're going to bring a little bit more of a structure to the design here. The last jar we went ahead and we just randomly placed canes down. Here we're going to use our kaleidoscope cane in the regard that it's going to be more evenly placed all around the top side of the jar. Now that I've got some of that kaleidoscope all placed down, I'm going to go ahead and run another strip of my black clay on a number 4 setting on that pasta machine. And we're going to go ahead and cut one side flush, and then we'll use the other side as our area that will be going around. Again, I'm using that jagged edge. I really love that jagged edge here. And we're going to have that right around the bubbled area on the Smucker jar at the very bottom. So you're going to get some excess towards the bottom. Again, you're going to use your blade once you bring it all the way around from that glass join mark. And you're going to go ahead and cut it flush and then cut off the excess at the very bottom of the jar as well. Again, I'm bringing in my burnisher and I'm creating that little scoring kind of thing all the way around on the bottom part of this jar. And we're also going to be bringing in that kaleidoscope yet again. And this time with the kaleidoscope though, you're going to go ahead and cut the kaleidoscope in half. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut a slice, and then from one corner to the opposite corner, so you get a triangle piece, you're going to cut this into triangle pieces and then place those all the way around your jar. Okay, so I want to point out as I'm coming around on this jar where I've got the triangle pieces, I'm doing it where there's a little bit of space in between each of the triangles I lay down, because when I come back around to the other side, I don't know if it's going to join up perfectly. So this way then, if I leave a little bit of space, which I did, I can eventually place in one of the triangles so that it'll look like it's all even all the way around. Now I'm also then going to bring in some of my orange clay. Again, I'm going to roll this out or through my pasta machine on a number 4 setting, and then I'm bringing in some of my circle cutters. And part of this is just knowing, finding the one circle cutter that works for you. So I like to go a little bit smaller, so I'm going with one of the smaller ones, probably like the second to smallest or a little bit bigger. And I'm just cutting a bunch of these circles. I'm going to bring each of these up, and they're going to go right in the juncture areas, right in between each of the kaleidoscope pieces. Now, as I start placing the little orange circles around on the triangles at the very bottom of the jar, they're hanging halfway off of that jar. Eventually, I'm going to come back in with my tissue blade, and I don't know if you're going to need to use a scissors, but I'm using my tissue blade here. You can use that. But the idea here is to go ahead and cut those circles in half so that they're flush right against the bottom of your jar. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and start working on the lid to my Smucker jar, and I'm covering this with that turquoise blue. I decided that, that jar is black. You got a black background on both ends, and I thought, no, let's break this up with a little bit of color. And so I'm bringing in my turquoise blue. I'm patting that around on the top of that lid, trying to get some of the bubbles out. I don't want to have a ton. If you have a couple in there, bubble-wise, oh well, it's not a big deal. But once you have that put around there, you're going to take your tissue blade and cut the excess clay off around the bottom rim of your Smucker's jar lid. Now that I have the excess turquoise blue clay cut off of the very bottom of my lid, I'm going to take my needle tool and reinsert it back into the holes I made on the very top of my lid. Once this is done, I will then bring back some of my slices cut from my bullseye cane, some cut circles using my orange clay, and really anything I want to put on top of this lid to decorate it up. So again, I am going to let you guys watch my hands talk as I decorate this lid to my second spider jar. So at this point, the jars and the lids have all been baked in my oven, 275 for about 10 to 15 minutes. And we're going to now bring in our black 22 gauge wire. And I'm straightening out using my pot holder, and then I'm just cutting, I'm just kind of cutting a large piece. I'm going to thread it through two of the holes, and then I'm going to bring it up from the very bottom of the lid, okay? Now, at first I thought, okay, I'll just do it on the one side, but then I thought, nah. And this is with the Vlasic Jar Lid, okay? So I decided, no, let's not do that. And I decided to do a crisscross instead. So I took another piece of my 22 gauge wire, I cut it, I fed that one wire back through. I thought, no, let's not do this. We'll crisscross it. So we'll have from one point to the other, and we'll just flatten it against the very bottom of the lid, and then we'll do the same with the other one, making this like X design on the very bottom of the lid. And I do this to kind of reinforce it so that it's got a nice handle on it. Mind you, the 22 gauge wire works great anyway as a handle. It's wonderful. But I'm going to feed those wires back up through, and I want to say, I think I cut both of these pieces of wire about 2 feet or so. So they're fairly long, 2 to 3 feet maybe. And then I'm going to take two of these pieces, and you can see me really straightening them out. If you're worried about, it burning your fingers when you're trying to pull those wires, use that, pot holder yet again. But I'm taking two of them. I'm going to go ahead and just tuck them under, doing the same on the other side a couple of different times. And then we'll take our needle nose pliers and we'll curl up the ends. Okay, to really make these jars, I think, just shine, I just think they're so cool, is I'm making a ball here with my black clay. It's not that big, but it's big enough to go ahead and create a little loop in your 22 gauge black wire, just a little loop, and then you twist the two ends, you cut off the excess, and then you sink it into that little black ball. Now, if you want to go ahead and use a little bit of super glue as you sink that into the ball, that's fine. You're going to bake those little balls for about, make sure they're fairly 7 to 10 minutes. That would do it. And then once you have that baked, and there, I sunk that in against the surface, my work surface here, so it's flat on the one side. Once that's done, you're going to take a little bit of super glue. Once this is baked, you're going to take some super glue on the very flat side of that, and you're going to glue it to the bottom of the lid. And this becomes the mechanism where you can hang a piece of chain using a jump ring to attach it in. And this is where you can hang those spiders. This is why I put like the little loop on the very, bottom end of my spiders that I had created from last time, because I wanted to be able to hang them, not just from doorways, but now I can hang them in these little special jars. Okay, from here, I'm just going to go ahead and use my wire cutter to cut down the chain. I wasn't sure how long I needed it. This was a lot longer than I really needed. So through trial and error of, attaching in your spider to the very bottom of that chain to figure out where it lands in the jar, you're going to have to do just a little bit of adjusting here and there. It really came down to the fact that my chain needed to be fairly short. It did not need to be really, really long. So keep that in mind when you're putting in these chains and stuff. You don't need to have a terribly long length, just a small amount of chain to help it hang down. Now, if you don't want to use chain, you don't have to. You can also use fishing line, and that might be even easier because then you can just adjust it just by tying it off where you want it. Okay, now that I've gotten my spider in my jar and I really like the length of how he's hanging down into the jar, I'm going to start to bring in some acrylic gemstones. Now you can buy these at any craft store. It's just some little plastic, little gems. They look kind of a little flashy, something fun, but they're also flat on the back. And what I like to do is I like to take a couple of these and using a little bit of my super glue, and I like to use the little wax tip thing to help place them in because it's kind of hard to do it by hand. But I use a little wax tip to also kind of bring and put those little gemstones in the bottom of my jar. I just like to attach them. It's just a fun added detail. Another detail that I did not add in on these jars was you could go ahead and put some pointed back rhinestones, glass rhinestones, into any of your little indented areas on the jars. So keep that in mind when you're creating these. Like, you could just have all sorts of fun. So with our Smucker jar, spider jar, I should say, I decided to change this one up just a little bit and do it how I was going to do it the very first time around. And so the two little holes that are right beside each other, we're going to put one wire in there, and then the other wire will be on the other two holes on the other side. And then we'll go ahead and twist them up just like I had done on the Vlasic jar. Now, when I do these, and in this case, because the lid is so small and because actually this jar was a lot smaller, I'm not going to try and attempt to put two spiders in here. This is also dependent upon how big your spiders are. If your spiders are kind of small, then yeah, you could probably stuff a lot more spiders into your jar. But in this case, my spiders are kind of big, so I'm going to have just one single spider hanging down inside my Smucker jar, which makes it really easy for putting that little ball that hangs the little chain down right in the center. Another little thing that I did different on the Smucker jar was I added in a little clasp. And I thought, this way then, let's say I do more than one spiders. Let's say I like a different kind of spider I have done and I want to change it out. Well, if I have it where it's with that little clasp up and it's hooked into the lid, I can easily remove that and put a different spider in. Okay, this is the end result in creating my Halloween spider jars. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic spidery day.